Good evening, Beverly. It's wonderful to be with you. This particular gathering is very unique, as you mentioned, and it is very contentious precisely because of some of the issues that are being addressed. This is really the first time that the church is speaking about sort of taboo issues in the church, such as women's priestly ordination, the married priesthood, and priestly celibacy, and inclusion and the church's general outreach to the LGBTQ community. And so, again, these issues have typically been very taboo. They're not really talked about in the church. So the fact that they're being discussed at such a high-profile gathering by representatives of church leadership from all over the world is quite significant.
Yeah. The Pope at the opening is urging unity and friendship, but the truth is there is a strong contingent that really believe he's been far too progressive.
There is, and even in the lead up to the synod, it began on October 4th, and the couple days leading up to that, there was a group of 5 conservative cardinals who published something called dubia, their official doubts and theological questions they have for the Pope precisely on some of these issues, asking him whether it is, in fact, a break in church teaching to make decisions or changes on issues such as women's priestly ordination or potentially giving blessings to same-sex couples. So that tension is already being felt, and I'm sure that it's going to be felt throughout this month.
Yeah. Many women in the church do have grievances about how they are treated. How contentious is this issue going to be, and how might this be addressed?
This issue is a long-standing one for the Catholic Church. It's something that's been discussed for decades, and I don't know that we're going to get to any resolution this time around. Pope Francis, in his responses to those dubia that were presented to him before the synod began, was sort of clear on the issue of women's ordination. He said that for now, the door is still closed. It can still be studied, he said, but the door is closed for now. So I don't think we're going to see any decisions or any change on that in the near-term future. But what he did say is that it is possible in some circumstances to give a blessing to a same-sex couple, which is something he's indicated openness to before, but he hasn't quite said in such a formal setting. So that is also something tone-setting going into this month-long discussion.
Yeah, that was quite an interesting development. Do you think it would become a widespread practice, the blessing of same-sex unions?
I think it could be. It sort of depends on each situation. The Pope in his responses said, there's a difference between Catholic marriage and a same-sex union, but just in the sense that people come up to pastors all the time to ask for blessings for different things, and pastors will give those blessings. So he said, if there's a couple that wants a blessing, that they're seeking God's grace in their path together, then pastors should feel free to give them that blessing. The distinction the Pope would make is if he senses there's an agenda behind that, then he says maybe it's not appropriate, but he did say, for couples who really want God's grace and blessings in their life, they should be able to get it if they want that in the form of a blessing.
Yeah. He, of course, made a very significant statement on climate change as a sort of opening gambit. It's an issue that he seems to feel very strongly about, but how much influence do you believe he has on this issue?
I think the Pope's influence on the climate issue has been quite strong. This has been a long-standing issue of his. He was elected in 2013, and almost from the beginning, he has been advocating for better care for the environment and against, climate change and against habits that are destructive. He wrote a document that was a very important document in 2015 that I think really helped spark a global discussion and carry that forward. And he released another document on the 4th of October, so just a couple days ago, really coming out against climate skeptics and calling out countries, he said, that are more responsible for higher emissions. He said, we have to take action. And I think when the Pope speaks about this issue, he does it in a way that is seen as authoritative and really capable of moving the needle. So I do think there is a resonance around what he says on the climate.
Yeah. And of course, probably the biggest issue to have impacted the Catholic Church in recent years has been the abuse issue, the clergy abuse issue, particularly against children. Do you think enough is now being done? Is it taken seriously all the way up the chain?
I think that is an open question. I think that there are going to be different answers to that question depending on who you speak with. I know that this issue is something that is going to be discussed this month as part of the synod, but there is also a group of survivors and advocates for victims and survivors of child sexual abuse before the synod began, who were here in Rome saying the church has still not done enough, and they wanted it to be a bigger point of discussion this month. They said it's really not on the agenda as much as they would like to see it be, and they really wanted to see more action and more of a commitment from the Catholic Church. I mean, the cases are still happening, and we see that in the news every day. So I think there is a greater awareness of the issue. I think the Vatican has taken more steps in recent years to try to get on top of the issue. But the big question, is, are all these new rules they've put out in recent years being applied? That's still an open question. And even the Vatican's own abuse body has said it would like to see more action on the part of church leaders. So I think the sense is that more action is happening, but there's still a lot that needs to be done.
Yeah, very interesting. Elise, great to talk to you. It should be an interesting month. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Beverly.